Hey HMS, welcome back to today's weekly newscast.
Today's newscast will be fairly short because we have Veterans Day tomorrow and we will have no school.
In honor of Veterans Day, Mr. and Mrs. Lego gathered some interviews from their friends to share with us.
We will play them right after we finish the announcements for this week's newscast.
Now let's finish Russell's sports segment.
Let's go! Welcome back to my sports segment, HMS. Seahawks had a bye week this week, but they go against the Packers this Sunday. Cowboys lost their game against the Broncos because they decided not to show up to play the game until fourth quarter, which was a little too late, still leading the NFC East after their loss. They play against the Falcons this Sunday. First HMS basketball game will be on Monday the 15th.
As you know, the Cubs United is still hosting the canned food drive.
The food drive will last all month of November.
If you want to donate any cans of food, please give them to your first period teachers.
There will be one prize for one class from each grade level.
I feel so jiffed. My sports segment has been so short lately.
Why don't we just replace it with a segment about how fun I am? Just once.
That'd be disrespectful to my segment.
Guys, come on, it's too early for this.
Alright. It's almost the end of this week's newscast.
Don't forget the end of tries next Thursday.
And you can now pre-order hot cocoa for only Mondays and Tuesdays.
We're also selling cups of corn at the Cub Cave Thursday the 18th.
And don't forget to buy your entry for the raffle. We will announce it next week.
As always, HMS, we leave you with a reminder that we're a community of learners working together to reach our fullest potential. Go be awesome!
Hello, Harrison students and staff. As part of Veterans Day this year, we would like to introduce you to a few of our friends. And the first of these guys is going to be a young man who, when we were in kindergarten, decided to go running around a corner with his eyes closed and totally flattened me out. And ever since that day, he and I have been best friends.
He was actually the best man at our wedding.
So go ahead and introduce yourself really quick.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Bazaldua. I grew up in Mapton, Washington. I've been in the military for about, 22 years, 8 months, and I only recently retired.
When were you drafted or when did you enlist?
I enlisted in September 8th, 1998.
What can you tell me about that day?
Well, that day was quite interesting. I remember my mom, my dad, and my brother, Jerry, the older brother, they got ready. My mom stayed behind because she didn't want to see me leave. And my dad, my brother, Jerry, took me to the recruiter. And from there, we left from, where was it? Tri-Cities, I believe it was, and flew over here to Spokane and spent the night in a hotel with some other people that were getting ready to enlist as well. And we went through what's called MEPS. And there they give you your whole physical, make sure your body is meeting the minimum strength and requirements to enlist.
What conflict did you serve in and which places have you been stationed?
Well, the conflict I've served in, where pretty much right away when I got to my first duty station, was the Kosovo conflict in Italy. And that started in 1999 and went through there, got to see let's see, I wasn't involved in Iraq, but I did get sent to Afghanistan, and I've been several other places since then. I've been to Jordan, Afghanistan, Qatar, Kuwait, and Manas, which is close to Russia.
So when you were away, how did you stay in touch with your friends and family back home?
Fortunately, due to technology, phone calls, and as technology improved, it got easier and easier to communicate. But most of the time, it was just phone calls. At the beginning, everything was very limited. We were only allowed phone calls back home about once a week, and those were about 15 to 20-minute calls. But any letters or old correspondence, the mail was allowed as long as we didn't say anything that that was considered need-to-know basis.
Right. So what are some things you remember most about your different deployments?
Them all being either very, very hot or very cold, and lots of dust. None of them I can say were particularly enjoyable, but they each had their own challenges. And that's what I mostly remember. Lots and lots of work, not a whole lot of free time, very little, in fact, and pretty much work and sleep for 6 months.
What's a phrase or word that will never be the same to you now that you have served?
Knuckle up.
What does that mean?
Knuckle up. Knuckle up means basically do the job regardless of the adversity. That's saying it nicely. You do the job no matter what your obstacles are. You find a way around your obstacles. Get the job done.
So what has been kind of difficult to communicate to your family and talk to them about your military service?
The amount of dedication it requires, especially going past your first enlistment and staying 20 years. 20 years does fly by when you look back at it, but it can be a very long time to withstand that, especially as you see friends come and go as years go by. You make friends when you see them leave. You get used to living in one location only to get up and leave again. I've been in 10 different duty stations, not deployments, but duty stations. So I've averaged between 2 and 2.5 years at each location. So you never really get used to or make some lasting friendships as much as you would like.
What was one thing you missed about the States the most while you were deployed? So what's the one thing you missed a lot?
Free time. That disappears when you're deployed. Like I said, it's mostly just work. 6 to 7 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days. And you still have to find time to sleep, communicate with family or friends back home, and find time to exercise. Because being in the military, you're expected to keep a certain level of fitness and still get the job done.
All right, go ahead and end with what your rank was, and then I'll just thank you for being with us tonight.
I ended with Master Sergeant, and that's a senior non-commissioned officer, and you run basically your flight or group of individuals for the jobs they're doing. And overall, the job itself can be very satisfying and very stressful at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up is our neighbor Ray. He is actually a Desert Storm veteran and was lucky enough to meet his wife while he was deployed in Panama. And the two of them have been together ever since and currently live next door to us.
Great people.
Okay, good evening. Can you please introduce yourself and which branch of the military you are in, including the rank you ended with?
My name is Ray Schaefer. I was in the United States Army and my rank was corporal.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted 3 months after I graduated from high school, September of 1990, and I left for basic training that October of the same year.
So what do you remember about the day that you enlisted?
That day was actually a sense of relief. I really didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I did notice myself going down the wrong path. My parents always told me what I was doing wrong and that I was headed in the wrong direction. Of course, what they told me always went in one ear and out the other. I now know my parents were correct in everything that they had told me. Basically because the military drilled that in my head. I just wanted my parents to be proud of me. In the end, it was a great feeling having them being proud of me, but it was even a better feeling being proud of myself.
Did you serve during any wars, and if so, where did you serve?
I did serve during wartime. I served during Operation Desert Storm. I was in Iraq, Kuwait, the Kingdom of Bahrain, and various locations throughout Saudi Arabia. Those locations were Dahirang, King Khalid Military City and Riyadh. And there was also times when I really had no idea where we were.
So when you were away, how did you stay in touch with your friends and family back home in the States?
The communication part was really tough. Obviously during wartime, and for about maybe a month and a half after the war ended, there was no communication at all. After that month and a half after the war ended and there was a ceasefire declared, was the first time I got to speak to my parents and basically let them know that I was still alive.
So what are some things that you remember most about your deployment and your time overseas?
This is a tough one. I think about it every day. Was basically my brothers and sisters that we lost during the war.
So when did you end up leaving the military?
I left the military November of 1999.
And what were your first few months out of the service like?
It was almost like the day that I joined the military. It was another sense of relief. Afghanistan was firing up, around that time. I knew people that were headed over there. Going to war, being a single guy, was hard enough. Basically just missing my family. But at the time that I got out of the military, I was married with a child, and I couldn't imagine having to go through that, being married with a child.
So is there a phrase or a word that would never be the same to you now that you have served in the military?
When I first started thinking about this question, it actually brought tears to my eyes. But the word freedom. And I say the word freedom because a lot of people just run around and say the word freedom. We're free, we live in a free country. But they don't realize what people had to go through for us to be free. And some of those people even gave the ultimate sacrifice and perished and never came back home to their families.
Have there been things that have been difficult for you to kind of communicate to your family and friends about your time in the military?
My actual time in the military, no, but the time I served over during Desert Storm, that's been difficult, and I really haven't communicated a lot about it to my family and friends, especially some of the experiences of what I did and what I saw over there.
So if you think about while you were gone, what are some of the things you missed the most about about the States while you were deployed?
I was 18 years old and my family. I remember the day they told me we were leaving. I didn't get to see my family all through after basic training, after advanced training. I was supposed to go see them after my advanced training, but they notified us that we were leaving for Desert Storm, and just having that feeling in my gut that I might not ever see them again.
Is there any message that you feel like you would like to share with our students about your time in the military, or kind of just any words of advice you'd like to give to them?
I should have been a statistic. I graduated from high school, but I struggled, and I noticed myself going down the wrong path. In the matter of seconds, I changed. And I did it basically all on my own. I snapped my fingers. I went down to the recruiter's office. I joined the military. I left, and the military turned me into the person I am today.
That's awesome.
And I say that because I went through a lot of crazy stuff during Desert Storm. Saw a lot of things that a lot of people probably wouldn't want to see, but I wouldn't change anything about my path, because I have the family that I have now, being my wife and kids, and it made me the man I am.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed. We really appreciate it, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Last up is our friend Bill Redker. I call him my American dad because he actually ended up co-signing for my first green card. He is a Vietnam vet, and he ended up giving me one of his dog tags. I always have it with me, and it was after seeing an interview with him my first year of teaching that actually changed my whole perspective on what Veterans Day was. Growing up in Canada, we call it Remembrance Day. It's a little bit different. But every year I take him an apple pie to thank him for his service. So thank you to all of our veterans who are currently serving and who did serve.
Good evening. Could you please introduce yourself, what branch of the military you were in, and include the rank you ended with?
My name is Bill Redker. I was in the United States Army, 1972 through 1978. And I left the military as a sergeant.
When were you drafted, or did you enlist?
I was drafted like 3 days after I got out of high school. Went to the mailbox, and there was a letter there from President Nixon, and it stated that I was ordered to report to, and it ended up being in Seattle for registered draft.
So what do you remember about that day when you went over to Seattle?
Confusion, all the unknowns that you've heard about from your friends and stuff. It was a lot of chaos too.
And where did you serve during the war?
I was in Vietnam, I was in Germany, and I was in the United States.
So when you were abroad, how did you stay in touch with your friends and family back home?
It was, back then we wrote letters. And you might have got maybe a letter every week or two, because it had to go to the military, and then the military would get it to you.
Okay, what are some things you remember most about your deployment?
When I landed overseas, I had $12 in my pocket. I think that was a big shock, thinking I was in a foreign country with only $12.
When did you leave the military?
1978.
So when you got out of the service, what were your first few months like?
I was one of the lucky ones. I'd served at Fort Lewis, Washington prior to getting out of the military. So I had purchased a business in Mabton, a service station. So it was kind of set up when I got out. I spent one day with my family moving. The next day I was running and operating the service station. So it was good. I saw a lot of people I hadn't seen in years, and didn't recognize a lot of them, I'd have to say. So it went fast the first 2 months, and I think I settled in okay.
Is there a phrase or a word that will never be the same now that you have served in the military?
I guess if somebody calls me a sir, it somewhat upsets me, because I wasn't a sir in the military. I was a sergeant, so I'd have to say, when somebody says, "Excuse me, sir," I don't respond to it very well.
So what has been difficult to communicate to your family and friends about your time in the military?
Unless you've been in the military, it is hard to get people to understand and to realize what it's about. If I'm talking to some people that have been in the military, if they've been in 10 years before me or 10 years after me, we can talk and share stuff and understand, because the language is different, kind of. And all my friends I went to school with, none of them were drafted, and they had no clue. You know, you try to talk to them and they look at you like, are you full of beans or what, you know? So I just have to say that's a tough one.
Well, while you were away, what was the thing you missed the most while you were deployed?
Clean bed, home cooked meal.
So that's it for our questions. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our students about your time in the military, or anything about veterans in general?
You know, I'm not a superstar. I ain't got nothing.
Well, you are to me. Okay.
Well, I guess on that question, I guess I could say the time I served, I would not want to do it again. However, I would not trade that for any other time.
Very cool. All right. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed.